Readers Entertainment Radio presents Booklights with your host, author Lisa Kessler. Booklights, where we're shining a light on good books.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to Booklights today. You are in for such a treat. I know we are coming into Thanksgiving week if you are listening, right now, but we are grateful for new books, right? And you all know, if you're a longtime listener, I love debut authors because it helps me relive that moment of, oh my gosh, my book is out. Who do I tell? But there's always so much enthusiasm for a debut novel. And today you are in for a treat because you are going to meet Angela Shupe. She is here on the show today with her debut novel, In the Light of the Sun. And it's available now everywhere. Her short stories have appeared in various literary journals, and her essays have been featured in publications such as Metro Parent, Women's Adventure, and Relevant Magazine, among others. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in English from the University of Detroit and has worked as an editor and communications coordinator. She is also a proud member of the Women's Fiction Writers Association and the Historical Novels Society. And I put a link to her website right there in the show notes, so feel free to click that anytime. Sign up for her newsletter. Debut authors love that. You can find links to her book, and her historical novel actually involves some family history in it. And I went poking around her website for you, and there are lots of amazing photos and all kinds of stories and also relevant information on her research for the book. So be sure to check out angelamshupe.com. And again, the link is right there in the show notes. And without any further delay, you there, Angela?
I am. Hello. Thank you so much, Lisa, for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I'm so excited to chat about your book because I actually was excited because there is also a musical element in it. And before I ever published a book, I was an opera singer. So I was very excited about that angle in your book. So
wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow. That's amazing. Okay.
Right. But
yes.
When the publicist sent me all the stuff, I was like, oh, we definitely have to talk about it. So I guess, do you want to start and tell everybody what the inspiration was behind this book and why they should go grab a copy?
Absolutely. I'd love to do that. Yeah. The inspiration behind the book, as you said, it is actually inspired by my family's story. My mom grew up in the Philippines. She was 11 years old when the Japanese bombed the U.S. air bases near her family's home. And she and her family essentially were forced to flee for the duration of the war. They fled to an aunt and uncle's home that was in the mountains, which is also a jungle area in Luzon. And at the same time, she had an older sister that was voice training in Italy with their grandmother. And their Italian grandmother, who was a former soprano with a couple different opera companies. She had traveled abroad with these two opera companies, but went back to Italy, bringing my aunt with her. And so my aunt was there in Italy during the war. And so both my mom and my aunt, the book, again, is inspired by their stories and features two sisters who essentially experienced this war, but on two very, very different war fronts. And
wow, that's fascinating. So you were able, through your family, to kind of bring in both what was happening in the Philippines and okay, here, I am not a historical person, but
okay.
Is it Mussolini who was in Italy?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
it was Mussolini.
Wow.
Yes,
wow.
yeah. And I couldn't find out from my aunt. I wasn't sure exactly the year that she went to Italy. Mussolini was already in power when she went, but it was prior to when the Germans declared war on Italy. So she was there, really, I guess, I would say navigating this very odd experience of voice training in this very opulent world of opera, but also under this very heavy-handed regime under Mussolini. That was a very scary place to be. So in the book, I did a lot of research as well as speaking with my aunts, and I grew up hearing these stories, Lisa, as a
Right.
child, and they just my mom and her sisters spoke of their family. Experiences just was so fondly, their father, who sadly became a widower. My mom's mom had passed away when she was quite young, and so he was an Italian immigrant that had gone to Italy, I think, traveling with his mom when she was performing there in the Philippines. I'm sorry, I said Italy, but traveling to the Philippines, and ended up meeting and marrying my mom's mom, settling down, having 6 kids. And
Wow.
anyway, they spoke about this, their childhood just so fondly of their father and how much music was such a big part of their life. And so I kind of carried these stories around my entire life. And I've said a couple times now, publicly already, I've had a couple different, I don't know, interview opportunities where my mom sadly had Alzheimer's for many, many years. And yeah, so as and she has passed now. Actually, all of my aunts also have. But as she was going through that experience and I was helping her, she just was fading further and further into herself. And even though I heard those stories growing up, I really felt this sense of urgency to know more about her life. And so I started really just to understand from a personal standpoint what happened in her life, and reached out to my aunts. They were all older than she was, and my godmother as well, who also grew up in the Philippines. My mom didn't meet her until they were both here in the US, but had a very similar experience to my mom and her sisters there in the Philippines, and reached out to these just wonderful, very, very strong women, asking them about their experiences during the war, and then my mom's sister specifically about what her experiences were like growing up. And, you know, as I said, because she had Alzheimer's, I really wanted to know more. And then I always thought this would make a beautiful story,
Right.
because even though they went through so much difficulty, when when I looked at them, what I saw were women who were very, very strong and very joyful women, and they lived very full lives. And that really had a very profound effect upon me in my own life. That, when you go through significant difficulty, there is hope.
Right.
You can go through that. There can even be hope in the midst of it. There can be joy and peace in the midst of it. And you can go on and live a very full life. And so I'm very indebted to my aunts and my godmother and my mom, like for giving me that wonderful, wonderful example. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, and I think it sounds like to me that it is a really unique story where you can really get the feel that it was a world war, because so often you read World War II fiction and it's one battle or one country or whatever, but this was happening in the Philippines and in Italy, all to one family, so you
Yeah.
really get the scope. And also, Philippines being bombed by Japan, you really get a bigger scope of that this really was a world war, right?
Yes, very much. It was really interesting to me when I started doing when again, I always thought this would be a beautiful story, and writing has always been a part of my life, and I didn't know if I could, I never tried to write a novel. So
Right,
it's
right.
a very, very large undertaking. And when I made the decision to do that, and I kind of went into that very slowly. But I started doing research, and what I found was really stunning to me. And I, I felt that I had a good understanding, particularly in the Philippines, of what had happened. But in fact, I found, Lisa, things are just so very, very complex.
Right.
And I found the same thing when I was doing the research for Italy as well.
Hmm.
And they're very different scenarios. The histories are very different, but they're just very complex. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this also was that even as a child, I recognized that many people around us, around our family, were not aware that there was even war in the Philippines. And, I watched how that affected my mom. And, I found that myself as well, just people did not have an understanding, which I completely, it makes a lot of sense because it's not something that is talked about. There's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of fiction and a lot of, movies centered on what happened in Europe, which is very, very important. I think there's so many stories out there that need to be told,
Right.
but to be able to bring this out and hopefully offer, you know, offer bring some more awareness to what happened in the Philippines. I wanted to do that. I wanted to honor my mom and her family, and I wanted to do that because I know that it touched my aunts as well. That lack of awareness. So, yeah.
Right. Right. Well, and I love the idea of the music, the underpinning of that, because there are so many stories like Sound of Music, and
Yes. Oh,
and
yes.
all these different, because music and opera in particular, because it's so old, has
Hmm.
survived world wars and all this kind of thing, and it really brings people together because those same
Yeah.
melodies can be heard no matter what language you speak or where
Yeah.
you're from. Those melodies can still touch people, and you can be in the Philippines and you can learn a German opera, or you
Yeah.
can be, I mean, it's just music is a universal language in a way. And then
Yeah.
during war, I think it becomes even more important.
Yeah, I very much agree with you, Lisa. And I feel that as well, that there is something that is unifying about music, and that is what you just said is so profound because I very much feel that way. I think there's a story. I don't believe it was in World War II. I think it was during World War One. And maybe you're aware of this. If I get this wrong, I'm not a historian, so forgive me if I don't have this
We're
exactly
only
correct.
writers.
That's right. But I remember hearing about a story where the on the front, on the war front, where the soldiers, I think it was on Christmas Eve where they paused the all of the fighting and
Yes.
the bombing, and I don't know. Okay, I really think I read that like there was someone was either playing or singing Silent Night, and it was
Silent
kind of
Night, right.
across the lines, like the Germans as well as the Americans troops, were, and it's just so it's just so profound.
Mhm.
It has the ability, I feel, to really reach down deep into somebody's heart and soul and just there's a comforting aspect to music. I feel there's even a healing aspect to music, and I watched that in my mom's life as well. Even with her Alzheimer's, she had it for 18 years, and there was a point where she was no longer able to converse, but it was again stunning to me that music still had her memory. The loss of her memory did not affect her memories of music. She still was
Right.
able to a certain point. There was a point where
Hmm.
she wasn't able to, but there was quite a span of time where she was able to still sing, which was
Hmm.
stunning to me.
Right.
I mean, I remember the first time I walked in and I I was, she was singing and I thought, wow, because she wasn't able to converse. But
Right.
yeah, so I really do feel like music, and and through her life, I watched her rehearsing. She voice trained for a period of time, just very much like Karamina in the story. She
Hmm.
wanted to go to Italy to voice train, and was just too young, so she wasn't able to do that. But she did voice train here for a short period of time, and she didn't continue pursuing that. But she did sing throughout her life. And I watched her. We went to we lived in this neighborhood where our church was, 4 houses down from our house. So we would walk on Sunday morning and I would watch her, rehearsing in our kitchen. And she would be rehearsing these sacred arias, particularly on holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And and she just had such a gorgeous voice.
Mm-hmm.
And it just filled her up, you know, and I watched how it affected people who listened to her. And it really, music is very, very powerful. It really is a
Yeah,
gift. So
yeah,
yeah.
and it is its own language because it doesn't. I used to tutor kids, elementary school kids, on classical music, and I could play different arias for them. And even though they had no idea of that language, they could
Right.
totally tell what the song was about. They came up with their own scenarios, and I would tell them what it actually was, and they would go, "We were right," because
Yeah.
music does have its own language, and I think that bombings and war can't change that. So I love that
Mhm.
underpinning of your book has the music in there. I think that's really fascinating.
Wow. Thank you for that. I haven't spoken with anyone who has your background in music.
Uh-huh.
So it's fascinating to, you know, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you were writing this, did you uncover any surprises? Like, I know it's a novel, so you changed
Yes.
some things, but when you were digging through family history and things, did you find any big surprises where you went, "Hey, what is this?"
So, you know, I would say now, yes, there have been a couple things. One of the things I don't really want to give away as a spoiler, but
Oh
something
yeah, no
does
spoilers.
something happens in the Italian narrative, in Rosa's narrative, to her that happened to my aunt that I had never heard of before. After the Germans came in, and when she told me that story about what happened to her, I don't know how I'd never heard it before. She never mentioned it, you know, as when I was young. And it was just very, very surprising to me that she went through this experience. So that's one instance. So if readers, you know, are reading through the book, I'm sure they'll come upon this situation. But and there were a couple other things that were, you know, I would say as I was doing the research, when I first started doing the research, one of the first things I came across were the comfort houses, Lisa, in the Philippines. And I had heard of them, but you know, I hadn't done any research into them before. And when I did, I was shocked and very, very grieved by what I found. And part of it was spurred on by some of the things my mom was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if it was, you know, Alzheimer's was affecting her memories, or if what she was saying was actually true. And so when I went and did the research, I actually had to stop for a period of time because I was just so grieved at what I found. And the comfort houses, if people aren't aware of that, it is this essentially it was a military strategy that the Japanese used to really dehumanize the population of the people groups that they went into the countries that they were invading, and they would go in and they would take young women, sometimes girls, and essentially take them captive, hold them in a building or a house, and they were subjected to a very brutal sexual slavery. And the number of women that were affected by this, I saw a number that was, I believe, approximately 200,000 women throughout Asia, all over Asia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing. I mean, it's mind blowing. And yeah, some of the other I've mentioned it a couple times in other interviews, and I almost hesitate to do it, but you know, part of it is bringing awareness to what happened. And one of the first things I found was actually in China, and it's referred to as the rape of Nanking
Mm-hmm.
or the Nanking massacre. And that, you know, I mean, it is so savage. And the idea that any human being could do this to another human being is just, you know, devastating. So that really, that my mom, I don't believe that my mom or her sisters was directly affected by this, but I know that they saw, you know, she
Right.
witnessed things, she observed things, and that, you know, she definitely experienced trauma because of that. So, and for the women that went through this, particularly in the Philippines, many of them never even shared about it because they were afraid that they would be ostracized by their families and
Right.
their communities. And so a lot of them, kind of hid this experience and did not actually start opening up about it to their families until they were older grandmothers
Wow.
in the 1990s. And
Hmm.
if anybody's interested, you can find information about that specifically in the Philippines. And just the idea that these beautiful women, lived essentially their lifetimes without being able to share, there's so much healing when you're able, I think, to,
Yes.
whatever you go through. Obviously, this is
Hmm.
so severe, but, being able to be honest about what happened and heal from it. And the idea that these women were not able to do that it's even, it just makes it even worse. But
Right.
so yeah, that was something that really shocked me, the
Hmm.
extent to which that happened. So I would say, yeah, that definitely was surprising. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, did you, without any spoilers, did you have a favorite scene in the book that turned out, better than you expected or that you can't wait for people to read?
Wow. Oh, I that's a tough question, Lisa.
Pick your
Wow.
favorite
I
child.
don't
Come on.
know. Oh my goodness. I don't know. I would say there's a scene with there are two scenes maybe. There's one with Karamina. It's probably three-quarters of the way through the book. And she's with Gabriel, and they go for a walk. And this is a scene where it's kind of just like a little reprieve in the middle of everything that's happening, and it's kind of hints at first love. And I just thought it was a really beautiful. I thought it was I
Uh-huh.
don't know. In
You're
my
allowed, you're
mind,
allowed to love your scenes.
I don't know. In my mind, like I think I picture things as they're happening and as I'm writing them. So like as I'm picturing, I think, oh, that's really. Now I don't know if was able to reflect it beautifully on the page, but in my mind it sure looked beautiful. So there's that scene, and then there's a scene towards the end that's really just a very. It's almost where Tommaso is speaking to Rosa, and he's reflecting on something that happened, and it affects one of the characters in the Italian narrative, a friend of theirs. And I originally wrote that one way and kind of had it down. And I don't know, it was maybe like a week or two after that. I don't know if I was biking or what I was doing or taking a walk. And it just, something came to me and I thought, oh, that, and it like in my mind, it changed the scene. And I
Right.
did that. And I liked that specific thing with this character because he's a complex character. I think he's
Hmm.
a complex character. But that
Hmm.
again, like Italy, that's another thing, the people didn't really have a choice. I mean, you're living under
Right.
this dictator, this, Mussolini, who had his hand in literally, I mean, what music you're listening to on the radio,
Right.
I mean, everything. It was just a crazy, crazy place. So, yeah, this character, I'll just say I have been calling him Ciro, but I think the Italian pronunciation is actually Ciro. So anyway, yeah, again, there are a lot of complexities to war, I think. So
Right,
yeah.
right. I love that. Well, I I don't want I could talk to you about this all day, but um but we always want to know what's next. And I think
Yeah.
this is a standalone, right? It's not a series.
Yes, this is a standalone. It is definitely a standalone. I have been doing research. One of the things when you said, were there any surprises? And there are a couple things that weren't directly related to this book, but as I was doing family research, that I thought, ooh, that would be fascinating to look into. So, one of the stories what I did start research for, I haven't started writing. I have a ways to go with research for it, but again, it would be family inspired like this book, but it would be a standalone book as well. So And I don't really want to say too much about
Okay,
it because
okay.
I haven't started writing it, but I will say if I'm able to do it, it is requiring research into several other countries that I'm not as familiar with, which is part of the reason why it's taking a little more time. So, yeah.
Right. Do you love the research? Is historical really where your passion is, or are you thinking about other genres too?
I love historical. I absolutely love historical, and I love the research. Yes, I really, really do. I could lose myself in the research and probably need to say, just cut myself off. You're done,
Right.
stop,
You have
start
to write.
writing. That's right. And that's
Yes.
not to say I don't enjoy other genres, reading other genres, but there's something about historical that I think it gives me a curiosity to know more about whatever it is, whatever I'm reading, Maggie
Right.
O'Farrell, whoever the author is, I'm curious. Well, what really happened there, and I love that about historical. So yeah.
Yeah, I love watching documentaries, and my my husband, or historical, documentary movies, and my husband is always teasing me because I call it homework TV, but I just like to have, I don't know, I feel like I'm learning through osmosis, but when I do that, I always have my phone handy, and history is so interesting because stuff happens that you think is unbelievable, and I get out
Yes.
my phone and I'm on Wikipedia. I'm going, no way. And then I get on, oh, way. Okay.
It
What?
actually happened, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Wild
that's
times.
funny. I
But
love that homework TV. That's great.
right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like to know things. But there's a new documentary on Netflix. Death by Lightning is the name of it. And
Oh,
it's
okay.
about the assassination of um Gro- Grover Cleave? No, James Garfield. The
Okay.
assassination of James Garfield, and it's called Death by Lightning, and it's very fascinating so far. But I learned that he got the Republican nomination for president without ever running for it. He didn't want
Oh,
it. And I'm like, there is no way. And I got on Wikipedia. Oh, wait.
oh, that's
Apparently,
amazing.
the Congress was so deadlocked for their Republican nominee, and Ulysses S. Grant was
Okay.
trying to get elected again. So he thought he had it, but apparently it was so contentious. And this guy, James Garfield, stood up for his friend who was running and gave
Okay.
this dynamite speech. And I guess after they went like 33 votes, they decided that there's no way that either Grant or that other guy he had introduced could win.
Wow.
And they unanimously voted for Garfield, and he
Wow.
never put his hat in the ring.
That is
What?
amazing.
Right? I had
I've
no
never heard
idea.
that, Lisa.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah. So I paused it and I was on Wikipedia going, there is no way. Oh, wait, that's
Yeah.
what happened. What?
My
Craziness.
dad was a professor, a college professor, and he taught political science and public
Mm-hmm.
administration. And when I was in college, I actually minored in poli sci, but
Oh,
more than the domestic politics, I didn't really like. He's sorry, Dad, but I wasn't as interested in that. But he loved all the presidential stuff. But I took a lot of international politics courses and international affairs courses. And I was going to say, you mentioned about history and just the things that are just like that are
yeah.
unbelievable. And I
Yeah.
remember one of my professors, his name was Dr. Ty, and I don't think he was trying to be funny. He had kind of a dry wit, but he would be talking about things that happened throughout history in various countries. And often it was, this is what happened. And then, 15, 20 years later, they did it again. And literally, like, I think I don't know, I have an odd sense of humor because I think I was the only one in the class that was kind of laughing, like, seriously, they did it again.
They
Like,
did it again.
this is what happened. They did that and then they did it again. And anyway, he would laugh with me. So I guess he didn't think I was too odd. But yeah, it's crazy the things that happen.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
history
Yeah.
is Yeah,
History
definitely
is
interesting.
wild. It's wild.
It is.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so much of it gets, I guess, because current events just keep rolling on, but a lot of
Yeah.
times it just gets forgotten. Like this documentary was kind of like he was the forgotten president because he got assassinated so early into his term.
Oh,
And so anyway, I had never heard any of this. So
that's
I'm
amazing.
fascinated. I do not admire, I mean, I do not envy all of the research you
Okay.
have to
Yeah.
do. I wrote one historical paranormal and I was like,
Okay.
man, this is not my thing. It's a lot of research. I mean, you guys
Yes.
go, you have to read multiple
Yeah.
things just to find out something like what kind
Yeah.
of shoes did they wear? Oh my
Yes.
God.
There is a lot. I know you can't see it, but I need more bookshelves actually in my
Uh-huh.
office, but I have stacks of books like behind here that are like, this pile is this research, this pile is this research over here,
Right.
it's just
But
it's
you
just a
need
part of it.
it
So,
because, yeah, your world
yes.
building for your novel has to, you don't want
Yeah.
one thing to pop somebody out of the story. So you need to know all
Yes.
those historical details. So anyway,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm in awe. So,
Wow. Oh, thank
so
you.
you're welcome. So if somebody reads In the Light of the Sun and they're really excited, how can they get in touch with you? Are you on social media? How should they find you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I am on Instagram primarily. I do have a Facebook page, and I'm trying to build it up. I never really used Facebook, so it's fairly new to me. I used it just a little bit, but not really personally. So anyway, I'm on Instagram. I use that a lot, and I love connecting with readers there. I also have a website, which is just Angela M as in Marie Shupe, SHUPE.com, and I have information there. There's a contact form as well. There's a little bit more information about my research and some things like that. So yeah, they can get a hold of me there.
Perfect, perfect. And I will remind all of our listeners that even though sometimes you feel like, oh, they're too busy, please send that note that you love the book because some days
Yeah.
writing is really hard. And one note from somebody of, I can't wait for your next book can make all the difference. So don't
Yes.
be afraid to reach out and tell them your favorite part of the book and all that. It can make a huge difference to an author.
I agree. Absolutely. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, Angela. And
Oh,
everyone, go out and grab your copy of In the Light of the Sun. It sounds fantastic. And thanks so much for being here.
thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Booklights. Be sure to connect with us at www.readersentertainment.com for articles, blogs, videos, and podcasts that matter to readers.